So, Hare Krishna. Thank you all for coming. Um, Before we start, would you like to introduce yourselves real quick? So I know who you guys are. I know most of you, but the ones I don't know, if you could introduce yourself.
My name is Luis.
That's it.
That's it.
That's it. That's your name.
Christina.
Near.
Yeah.
Robbie.
Shaker. And I'm Prabhavishnu. So let's get started. Okay. So whatever I'm about to speak today, um, just hear with an open heart and open mind. Don't jump to any conclusions. Don't have any preconceptions or notions in your mind. Whatever you've heard about bhakti, whatever you've heard about Ramayana, whatever you've heard about the festival, just put it aside for now and just hear. Because hearing is very important. Because our most powerful sense of acquiring knowledge is our hearing. For example, when someone is sleeping, they can be warned of an incoming danger simply by someone yelling their name, by saying, "Hey, Christina, someone's coming to kill you. Wake up." Immediately you wake up and you can protect yourself. But your hand cannot do so because your body is sleeping. You don't know what's going on. Your hand cannot know what's going on. But hearing, the ears, they know what's going on. So in the same way, let's give our next 30 to 40 minutes to just hear about Ramayana. Now, speaking of the Ramayana, who here knows what the Ramayana is? Does anyone have any ideas?
Story of Lord Ram.
Lord Ram. Any idea?
Yeah, it's a long story, like going to Lanka and bringing back Sita. So
Robert, do you have any idea? No? Christina?
Question it, like, is it from the Mahabharata? Is it around that era?
It's actually before the Mahabharata. So Ramayana and Mahabharata are the two Indian epics, so-called Indian epics. It's like the Iliad and the Odyssey, the Greek epics. It's like long stories, basically, long poems. It's a big poem put together. Some 200,000 verses, something like that, put together. So that's the Ramayana. But we're going to go over the entire Ramayana in 40 minutes today. And each step of the Ramayana is divided into 7 parts. And each of these 7 parts has many, 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 many lessons that we can learn from. We're going to condense the entire Ramayana into 25 lessons. So I'll give a brief summary of what the Ramayana is about. So Ramayana, the name Ramayana, Ramayana, means the story of Ram. Ram was a great king way back in the Indian subcontinent about some millions of years ago. Millions. I'm not talking about the British pre-colonial, pre-British times. Much, much longer. Much before that. And he was a wonderful king. And you've heard from history that kings had many wives, but this king had only one wife. He believed in just one wife, loyalty to just one woman. His other virtue was that he was a very honest king, very compassionate king, very loving. He always took care of his citizens, his family, everyone around him. He didn't consider a dog to be different than a man. So he saw the dog and the human being with the same vision. So like that, he was well loved throughout his um, capital, Ayodhya. It's a city in northern India. And there he was ruling the kingdom for thousands and thousands of years with his 3 other brothers. Lakshman is one of them, and the other one is Bharat. And the reason why I'm mentioning these names is because we're going to be speaking about these. These will come up in the next 25 minutes. So the story of Ramayana starts with Ram and his wife. They recently got married, and then unfortunately they get exiled to a forest called Dandakaranya for 14 years. Why? We'll find out. So the story starts from, well, our version of Ramayana starts from, the condensed version starts from the forest when Ram gets banished. So different parts of the Ramayana speak about different things. And the first thing that comes up is the lesson that we can learn is the power of association. Now, Ram's father, sorry, had three wives, his mother and two other ladies. His mother's name was Kaushalya, and his other wife's name was Kaikeyi. Kaikeyi had a son named Bharat, and Kaushalya, Ram's mother, had two sons, Ram and Lakshman. Now, Kaikeyi loved Ram. They were very, very close. They were so close that Ram considered Kaikeyi to be part of his heart. But when it was decided that by the king that Prince Ram would become the next king, then Kaikeyi was very happy. But her maidservant, this lady over here, the elderly looking lady, she put poison into the mind of KK, telling her that if your son, if Ram becomes king, then your son Bharat will never become king. You will never get to see your son coronated as a king. And she spoke like this for in many different ways. And finally, she was able to convince KK that you should do something about it. So KK, what did she do? Because of these bad intentions put in her mind through the servant named Mantara, she went to the king and said, if you don't coronate my son Bharat as the king, then I will kill myself. So the king is perplexed because he had given his wife his word that because you saved my life once upon a time, whenever you need it, I will do whatever you want me to do. I'll give you that boon. So she used the boon in this instance. And what did she do? She chose to banish Lord Ram, who he considered her heart. So the distance between him and KK increased physically. But Lord Ram never considered KK to be a bad lady. Um, so bad association leads to envy of others for no reason. No apparent reason, KK started hating Lord Ram and asked Lord Ram to leave. Lord Ram decided, no problem. I'm not attached to the kingdom, nor am I attached to the forest. The forest and the kingdom are the same to me. In fact, he was so hurt by KK's decision of banishing to the forest that he went and told her, I'm hurt because you did not come and tell me directly. You went to my father. You upset my father. Now he's an old man. He's upset. He's crying. He's heartbroken. Had you come to me and told me to leave, I would have left immediately because you're my heart. And how can I refuse my heart? So like this, he was such an elevated person that his heart was broken not because he was banished, but because he wasn't consulted first. He he felt bad that he wasn't punished directly. Rather, he had to hear from his father indirectly. So this shows that he was not attached to the kingdom, which was his service, nor was he attached to the position. So he was indifferent to both. And this is another lesson that we learn from the beginning of the Ramayana. And then what happens is this whole thing is we can see it from a metaphorical point of view. Now, why does Ram decide to go to the forest? Why does he accept this punishment? We can see that he accepts this punishment to kill all the negative tendencies in the heart. Now, had he stayed and refused his father's order, no, I will not listen to this lady. I will become king. That would have increased the greed in his heart. He would have become malicious towards KK. He would have been upset at his father for listening to such a ridiculous request when it was his birthright to become king. But rather, he gave up all these negative thoughts and he just decided, let me just go. It doesn't matter. If I go, I know automatically all these bad qualities will not affect me. He rose above these qualities. So this was another lesson that we can learn from the Ramayana, that when we are faced with sometimes negative things in our life, they don't necessarily mean a bad thing. They could always be a lesson for learning something higher. And that's exactly what Ram did. He accepted the extreme reversals in his life in the proper spirit. So this world works in such a way that there's somehow or the other, we're in some difficulty at all times, whether it be mental, whether it be physical, whether it be something external, like it's too hot today, all of a sudden it's cold tomorrow, or someone said a few bad words to me, or someone punched me on the train for no reason. Somehow or the other, we're always troubled in various circumstances for no reason. But someone like Ram, he doesn't get affected by these things. He lost his kingdom, no big deal. He went to the forest. 14 years, no big deal. Took it like nothing. So this is another thing, another lesson that Lord Ram teaches us through his exemplary behavior. And then, while he was leaving, his palace was so big that it would take a few hours to walk from one end of the palace to the other side. His city was so huge that it would take days to walk from one end to the other. And there were so many comforts. His palace was magnificent, bedecked with jewels, bedecked with ornaments, gold, diamonds, jewels, so many things. But he gave all of that up in a jiffy. He didn't even hesitate. He didn't think, where am I going to sleep? What am I going to eat? Who is going to serve me? Are my servants going to come clean my bed? Are they going to wash my clothes? None of this. Am I going to be able to enjoy with my wife in the palatial luxuries? No, he didn't worry. He just left. So in Sanskrit, Aram, the word below Ram, this one means comfort. So Ram and Ram means happiness. So we generally think comfort equals happiness. But for Lord Ram, it wasn't the case. He transcended the material comfort, so to say, and rose to the level of true happiness, the spiritual happiness. The mantra that we just chanted before, the Rama over here, is not different from this Rama. It means we're talking about King Ram here. So Ram means happiness, the supreme bliss. So because he had that internal bliss inside his heart, he was able to give it to others, and he was able to rise above the exteriors, the externals, so to say. So he left Aram to enjoy the Ram. And while he was leaving his kingdom, his citizens loved him so much that they couldn't bear his separation. His leaving the kingdom was an utter shock to them. And they just couldn't believe their fortune. They were cursing their fortune. They were cursing whoever that higher power was for making such a disaster in their kingdom. And they started to follow King Ram as he was leaving with his wife and his younger brother Lakshman. They all started to follow him. And it got to the point where it turned night. A whole evening had passed, a whole day had passed, and it was nighttime. So they all went to rest. All the citizens who followed King Ram, they started to build their tents around his big tent. And Ram realized that, gosh, the whole point of going to exile will be ruined if these people would come with me. Like, what's the point? So around 2 o'clock at night, between 2 and 3 a.m., he told his brother, let's go. Let's leave these citizens here. Because if they find out that we're leaving now, then they'll follow us. And this will defeat the purpose. So he left at nighttime. And what this indicates, or what we can learn from this, is that our alertness in life, like for example, not just in spiritual life, even in material life, when we get that email, like, you have been accepted to so and so university, you have to reply within the next 4 hours. And you're like, okay, no problem, I'll reply in 2 hours. But then for some reason, you miss it, you forget to reply, or something comes up, you don't get it. Or there's that interview, that pressing interview that you have to come today. It's now or never, but you can't make it. The same way in spiritual life, if you miss the opportunity, then it's gone. God knows when it will come again. So in the same way, all the citizens of Ayodhya, the city in which Ram lived, they all lost that opportunity to follow him. Some who managed to wake themselves up, they made it, but the rest couldn't make it. So this is another lesson that we should always be alert, both in spiritual and material life. Welcome. What's your name?
Ocean.
Ocean, nice to meet you. And yours?
Paulina.
Paulina, welcome.
Handsome face.
Sorry?
Handsome face.
Thank you. So we're talking about Ram. There's a festival going on upstairs. I'm sure you saw a lot of people, a lot of commotion, noise. upstairs all coming down? No. Okay. Anyway, we're celebrating Ram today, King Ram. It's called the Ram Navami, as in the coming back of Ram. So we're just discussing various lessons that we can learn from the Ramayana, which is an epic from the olden days of India. So, like this, Ram left at night. Now, this curse that Keiki had given Ram to leave, or this punishment that she had given Ram, actually became a curse for her because Keiki's own son, Bharat, or the second youngest brother of Lord Ram, who Keiki wanted to become king. He wanted Bharat to become king. But Bharat was so devoted to Ram that he refused. He was so upset with his mother that he told her, "How could you do this? How could you tell Ram to leave? You know how much I love Ram. Why would you do this to me? Because of your decision, I disown you." So her own son, for whom she did all of this, disowned her. So we can see that this so-called curse of Bharat, although he's disowning his own mother, it becomes a blessing in disguise because then the whole Ramayana could have been spoken. The whole pastimes of Ram could be enacted. Had he not, had he not, uh, had he said, "Oh, mother, you did the best thing," and had he taken the kingdom, then the story would have been completely different. We would not be discussing this right now because then it wouldn't become Ramayana. It would become something of Bharat, like Bharat. I don't know if that's a word, but it would be a story of Bharat, not King Ram. And then Bharat, what he did was, instead of taking the kingdom, he decided to follow Ram. He took his chariot and followed Ram to wherever he was staying in the forest. And he told him, "Look, brother, elder brother, I don't want to be the king. I want you to be the king. Please come back." And Ram's like, "No, I'm following the orders of my father, of your mother. It will be very disrespectful if I don't follow their orders." And they argued like this for hours and hours. And finally, Ram said to Bharat, "Look, we can go on arguing forever, but the only way to please me, if you really want to please me, if you want to do that, then you have to listen to me, to hear what I'm saying. What I want you to do, only that will please me. Whatever you want to do will not please me." Then Bharat understands, okay, fine, I should listen to him because that's truly pleasing him. If someone says, "Get me a cup of water," and then you go get him an orange juice, that's not really pleasing that person. You're kind of displeasing that person. So Bharat finally listened. And what he did was he took the slippers of Ram and he put them on his head and he walked all the way back to the kingdom, Ayodhya. Actually, he didn't even enter Ayodhya. He went to a city near, like a small, like a little, it's like a weapon storage area kind of place. And there he made a little hut and there he put the slippers of Ram on a pedestal and he started worshiping those slippers in as a symbol of Ram, that he was worshiping Ram through the slippers because to him the slippers were not different than Ram. So like this, he decided to run the kingdom on behalf of Ram for the next 14 years. So we can learn from this is that our goal should always be to please the Lord, the Supreme, the all-powerful, whatever we consider to be the highest, the strongest, whatever we consider to be our authority, we should always try to please them. And only then will we find our happiness. And then we can also learn that when Bharat started to worship the absence of Lord Ram through his slippers, that's when he realized that all of the citizens of Ayodhya were becoming happy because they realized that, okay, although Bharat's mother, Kaikeyi, was an evil person, her son is the complete opposite, and he's worthy of being called a king. So they accepted Bharat as a representative of Ram. They didn't consider him king, but they started to accept that he will be ruling on behalf of Lord Ram. So because Bharat understood that Ram is a supreme king and his happiness is everyone's happiness, only then did he achieve success in ruling the kingdom. And then what happened was now, so this concludes the first section of the Ramayana. Then we move into the second part. The second part, Ram and Sita and Lakshman, the second brother of the younger brother of Ram, is they're living in the forest together in a small hut, and everything is great. 13 years have passed by. Now the last year comes, the 14th year, and what happens is there's this beautiful demon named Suparnaka. It's a long name, so we'll call her Soup. So Soup sees Lord Ram and falls in love with his beauty because Ram is one of the most beautiful things she'd ever seen in her life. And she thought to herself, how can I get this beautiful, handsome hunk all to myself? So she's a demon. She's not so good looking. So she takes on, and they have the ability to transform their looks to deceive others. So what she does is she changes her form into an attractive, beautiful woman, changes her skin color to golden, from darkish to golden, and she approaches the hut of Ram, Sita, and Lakshman. And when she does this, she tries to seduce Lord Ram. But Ram, because he's attained that happiness, inner happiness, he doesn't need that external happiness. He's already satisfied with Sita. So Lakshman, because he knows that his brother is an honorable man and is not interested in this woman, he tells her to leave. He tells Soup to leave, but Soup decides not to leave, and she tries to further seduce Ram. So Lakshman, what he does is he cuts off her nose, takes his knife and just cuts off her nose. And when she cuts off her nose, immediately her actual form comes out because she's in immense pain. When you're in pain, whatever great things you're thinking, today I'm going to do this, I'm going to wake up early, I'm going to eat healthy, I'm going to do this, I'm going to shower with cold water, I'm going to go on a run. All those things go out the window. All you can think of in that moment is the immense pain that you're suffering. Your mind can only focus on the pain. So while she was focusing on that pain, she assumed her huge, ugly form of a demon. And that's when Ram, Sita, and Lakshman, they all knew what the actual thing was. And this is a representation of how we see a lot of people in the world who put on this bravado, this outward covering, this secondary nature to please others, to show themselves off, to kind of make themselves look better than others, when in fact inside they're hollow and they have no substance. There's nothing good about them. Because if there was something good, then why would they try to show something else? So this is a lesson that we shouldn't try to be someone who we're not. We should always try to be true to ourselves and be true to others. So in the same way, this another lesson we can also learn is that we cannot achieve true happiness, or we cannot please others or the supreme person, the supreme power, God, whatever you want to call it, by deception. It can only be done through honesty. And one other example or pastime in the story of Ramayana is Sita. Now Sita, she would spend her day in the hut while Ram and Lakshman used to go out and gather food. And after Soup came and tried to disrupt their amazing, well, little cottage, Lakshman, he drew a line and put some mantras around it, some chants. He chanted some mantras so that no one else could come inwards, but everyone who was inside the circle could go outwards. Now, Soup, after she got her nose cut, she went to her brother, Ravan. Ravan is one of the main characters of Ramayana. Ram's enemy is Ravan. Soup goes and tells Ravan, dear brother, I got my nose cut off by this stupid young kid. I was trying to seduce Ram, this beautiful looking man, and his brother cut off my nose because he didn't like my advances towards his brother. And Ravan got really upset that someone dared to cut off his sister's nose. So he said, but he also knew that this was not really his place. But then Soup said, his wife is really attractive. You should try stealing his wife. And if you steal his wife, then Ram will be heartbroken. He will come to me. So let's try this out. So that's how he convinced Ravan to go and steal Ram's wife Sita so she could have Ram to herself. So like this, Ravan disguised himself as a saint, as a mendicant. And when he went, and he disguised himself as an elderly mendicant, actually, not just a mendicant. So, and Sita, she was a very chaste lady, a very well-behaved lady who always adored and respected elders. She could never say no to her father, her mother, her uncles, any senior person she met. So when this mendicant approached the cottage asking for alms, she, because of her nature, genuine nature of being kind and chaste, she decided to go outside the circle and approach the, the mendicant. And when she did this, he immediately grabbed her hand and started running off. This is how she was kidnapped. So this is where there's a twist in the story of Ramayana. It's not just about being exiled for 14 years. Now Ram's wife is kidnapped. Now Ram has to get his wife back. But Ram, he has so many followers all over the country, all over the world, that they come to his help and rescue. On the other hand, there was another pastime where, at the same time, right before Sita was kidnapped, Ram and Lakshman were not present to protect her because Ravan's accomplice, Maricha, another demon, don't forget the name, name's not important, another demon, took the form of a golden deer to attract Sita's attention. This is prior to Sita being kidnapped earlier in the day. So Maricha took the form of a golden deer and captivated Sita's mind. And now Sita has told Ram, I want that deer. Now Ram, because he was such a wonderful husband, he couldn't say no. He said, okay, dear, I will get you the deer. And Lakshman, before he left, he drew that circle. Because of soup, he drew that circle and he said, you don't come out and don't make sure no one goes in. And then they went hunting for this deer to bring the deer back for Sita. So this is a lesson we can learn where we have so many undue attachments. We get attached to all the silly things in life. And when they don't work out, we get upset. Like we make these plans. Oh, today I'm going to do this. Tomorrow I'm going to do that. And 3 days later, this will happen. Somehow, those plans don't always work out. Some work out, some don't. Most of them don't actually. And then we get upset. Or we get attached to someone. And then that person ends up breaking our heart. And then we get upset. But all this attachment does is just cause suffering to us. And this is an example of how being attached to a deer for no reason, Sita got kidnapped. And she put Ram and Lakshman also in difficulty. So when Ravan was kidnapping Sita, this is a little esoteric part, so just bear with me for 2 minutes. Because Ram and Sita are like representing the supreme happiness from that mantra that we just chanted. Because Ram and Sita, they're not different. They're like a couple. Like in couple, we say, oh, she's my better half, he's my better half. So like that, Sita is the better half of Ram, and Ram is the better half of Sita. So when Ravan kidnapped Sita, it seemed that he had kidnapped the Sita, the actual person Sita, but that wasn't the case. He had kind of like a snake sheds its skin sometimes, or like any reptile you see this shed their skin, or sometimes a year. She kind of like hid herself elsewhere and gave Ravan like her material body, not like the spiritual body. So this is a lesson that we should not let illusion get to us because what it causes problems. Like the previous lesson was we should not be getting attached to things. And this one is we should not be illusioned by our weaknesses. She knew her weakness was deers and other cute little things like birds and whatnot. But she couldn't control that weakness. So she failed to be kept inside that circle and then she was kidnapped. One of Ram's friend was a vulture. Now this vulture he was able to speak. He was a powerful vulture. He was 60,000 years old. And he was a loyal servant of Ram in the kingdom of Ram. And when he heard Ravan running away with Sita and then getting on his plane and then flying away, he tried to stop them. This 60,000-year-old vulture was old. In terms of vulture years, that's pretty old. So he tried to attack Ravan and he succeeded to a certain extent. He cut off the wings of the aircraft. He killed the pilot. He killed one of the other accomplices of Ravan. But Ravan, because he was so powerful, he just cut off the vulture's wing. But the vulture didn't give up. Although he fell down, he tried again with his other wing. He flew up again and tried to attack Ravan and protect Sita one more time. But Ravan cut off his other wing. But Although he failed, eventually Ram found him because he saw blood dripping. He created a huge path. He did that to indicate to Ram that this is the path that Sita has taken when she was kidnapped. So when Ram eventually found Jatayu, the eagle, the vulture, he was very pleased with the vulture because the vulture did his duty, performed his duty all the way till the end. He didn't quit. Sometimes when we're doing our work or when we're working on a project, we're almost there, but we can't figure out the last part. We're so close to finishing, but we just give up. Just give up. Just like, I don't want to do it. I'm exhausted. But Jatayu didn't. This vulture, he kept fighting till his last breath. In the same way, we should never give up our duty. No matter what where our work is, we should always try to finish it. Whether whether it be at a corporate or spiritual life or friendship, whatever we do, we should try to do it to the best of our abilities. And that's what this vulture teaches us. And then patience, determination, and enthusiasm. So Soup was thinking that I got Ram. I wasn't able to get Ram, but my brother somehow was able to get Sita. So Ram will come to me. But the thing is, God only reveals himself to who he wants him to reveal himself to. He doesn't just reveal himself to everyone. Otherwise, the world would have been a wonderful place. But God doesn't do so because he sees our qualification. He sees if we're qualified, only then does he reveal himself. So, in the same way, he revealed his true self to the vulture and gave the vulture ultimate happiness. But Soup wasn't able to get that. Ravana was also not able to get that because he stole the Lord's wife. And then honesty. Now, fast forward to the third part of Ramayana. Ram has traveled all over India looking for his wife, and then he comes to this other forest further down south, and he's resting with Lakshman, and this monkey sees these two wonderful men, and he notices that they have this bright effulgence around them, that there must be some elevated people, and he is curious. Who is this person? Who are these two people? Let me go find out. But because he's a monkey, he doesn't want to scare them. So he takes the form, he changes his form and dresses himself like a mendicant. And he approaches Ram and he introduces himself as a mendicant. And Ram somehow knows that he's not who he is saying he is. So Ram still introduces himself as Ram, tells him that I was the king of Ayodhya, my wife was kidnapped, I'm exiled in the forest, this demon came and took my wife, so I'm looking for her with my brother, can you help me? And he says, yes, I can. I have a whole army of monkey warriors. Monkey warriors? What do you mean monkey warriors? You're just a mendicant. But by this time, the monkey had taken his true form and he was standing in front of Ram as a monkey. And his name was Hanuman. And this is when this really upset Ram because he thought someone was trying to cheat him again. He already had someone cheat him, his wife, and kidnap her. And now he was upset that someone else was cheating him. So he did not speak to this monkey for 4 months. Although this monkey was his loyal servant from his kingdom, he didn't speak to him. So we should always try to be honest in our dealings with others and not put up this bravado, this facade to please others. We should just try to be ourselves as much as possible. But this monkey, although he had failed to please Ram in the beginning, he really, really worked his way up and did everything he could in his power to please Ram. And later on in the Ramayana, fast forward again, there comes a time where they have to cross, Ram and all the monkey warriors, they have to cross from the southern tip of India to Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka and India are divided by the Indian Ocean. So how do they cross? How can a human being just walk over water, do it, and just get to the other side? So they needed to put boulders and rocks to do it. So like this, all the monkey warriors and Ram and his brother and all the other people who are helping Ram, they built this bridge. Now in the process, they got to the next part, but they weren't sure. Before they got to the next part, they wanted to make sure that if that was the right part of Sri Lanka where Sita was being kept. So they asked Hanuman, can you go inquire? Now, the distance between these two islands was huge, and only one person could do this, and this was Hanuman, because he had the capability of increasing his size unlimitedly. So he increased his size, he made himself 1,000 times bigger than he usually was, and he jumped. He jumped from India to Sri Lanka and went looking for Sita. So he became a very valuable instrument because he saved everyone a lot of time and effort. So before they could all cross and get to Sri Lanka, he mapped out the whole area and made sure that Sita was there. Sita was to be found, and he came back with good news and confirmed with everyone that Sita was indeed there. So they continued their march towards Sri Lanka. Now, on the path, while Hanuman went looking for Sita towards Sri Lanka, he was interrupted by three obstacles. The first one was Mainaka, a golden mountain. Now, this golden mountain invited Hanuman. Oh, you must be tired from flying, or not flying, but leaping, because his leap was so big that it looked like he was flying. So the mountain invited him, come, take rest. Sometimes when we're doing something, we get distracted by social media or someone else or our bed, our pillow, and we decide to take a nap. And what happens? We wake up 2, 3 hours later and we've missed our deadline. But Hanuman, because he knows the importance of the situation, he decided, no, no, I don't need to net rest now. I'll come rest when the mission is complete. Then he keeps jumping, flying, whatever. And then he meets another snake, a serpent called Surasa. This snake has the capability of increasing its size and wants to capture and eat Hanuman. Hanuman says, I don't have time for this nonsense. I'll come back later. But the snake is adamant. No, you have to fulfill my desire. So Hanuman's like, okay, fine, whatever. So Hanuman decides to increase his size, and then the snake also increases its size. So there's a competition of who can become bigger. And then what Hanuman does, because he knows the snake will just keep getting bigger and bigger, and I can also keep getting bigger and bigger, but this won't bring us any result. So he immediately shrinks himself into a small monkey and goes into our mouth and leaves. And the condition was that the snake said, if you can get into our mouth and leave without me eating you, then you can continue on your journey. Otherwise, you have to be eaten by me. So Hanuman got into her mouth and got out because he was able to reduce his size. So like this, he moved on towards Lanka. And then another demon who tried to stop Hanuman, she tried to stop him by stealing his shadow. And when you're trying to go somewhere, if someone holds on to you and doesn't let you go anywhere, that's kind of difficult. In the same way, she couldn't stop Hanuman directly, so she tried to capture his shadow. And in this way, she tried to stop Hanuman, but he kept going. Same way, in bhakti, sometimes we get many distractions. Not only bhakti, even in material life, like I said, there's many distractions. So we shouldn't get distracted by the distractions. We should always keep moving on. And this is what we can learn from this part of the Ramayana. Now, fast forward again. So when Ravan had kidnapped Sita, he took her to his kingdom in Sri Lanka, and he held her captive there in his garden. It was a huge garden, almost bigger than his palace, and that's where he had kept Sita. And his wife was Ravan's wife. He had a wife, and his wife was such a wonderful lady, just like Sita. And she completely was against him kidnapping Ram's wife. And she told him over and over again, why have you kidnapped her? You should give her back. This is not your property. She's not yours. You're already married. You have me. You have other wives. Why do you need another one? And Ravan was thinking, who is she to tell me this? It's my life. I'll do what I want. If I want another wife, I'll get it. I'll get her. But he thought that his wife was jealous of Sita, but she was just trying to help him not commit an offense. But he couldn't understand that. Same way, his brother, Vibhishan, another important member of character in the Ramayana, he told his brother, you need to return Sita. You should go to Ram, apologize, and say sorry for doing what you've done. And he thought that Vibhishan was saying this because if he went to Ram, Ram would kill Ravan and then Vibhishan could become king. He thought his brother was doing this to usurp his kingdom, but he was just trying to help um, Ravan understand that you were doing something wrong. I'm only trying to help you, but he couldn't see it because he was so arrogant. So sometimes our arrogance, it blinds us from our well wishers, our people who want our good, They try to give us warnings, they try to give us tips, they try to give us advice, but we're so invested in that particular moment in something that we think is right for us that we lose the bigger picture. We lose sight of the bigger picture, and we fail to understand what is good for us and what is bad for us. And this is exactly what happened to Ravan. And what happened was, because of this, eventually, the next part of Ramayana, Ravan lost his life because of his pride and attachment to to Sita. He was so adamant on having Sita. He was so stubborn that he couldn't see what he was doing. He had he had a brother named Kumbha, and Kumbha used to sleep for 6 months of the year, and the other 6 months he used to eat. So you can imagine someone who's sleeping for 6 months and eating for 6 months, how huge they could be and how powerful they could be. His Kumbha's size was unimaginable. There's no measurement that could be put to it. And when Kumbha lost his life in the battle of trying to protect Ravan from the monkey warriors and Ram and his brothers, still Ravan wasn't able to see that I just lost my brother. I should stop now. He couldn't stop because he was so attached to having Sita. Then his son Indrajit, he also lost his life trying to protect his father. Still, Ravan couldn't understand. Still, he was holding on to that notion that yes, Sita will say yes one day and she will become mine. He was so obsessed, but he couldn't see his own downfall. After losing two of his stalwart warriors, he still couldn't see his upcoming death. And eventually, he lost his life. Eventually, he lost his life to Ram. Ram killed him with an arrow that pierced his heart and just killed Ravan. He just died from one arrow. All of the effort that he put in to capture Sita, lost his brother, lost his son, killed so many of his warriors, lost his entire kingdom because Hanuman burnt his entire kingdom. He had nothing left. Still, he was holding on to the idea that Sita will be mine. We see so many people out there who lose lives for no reason, who lose relationships, family, because they're attached to something wrong, because they're attached to something unlawful, illegal. Like, I just came back from India last week, and my uncle was driving me to the airport from his house in Delhi, and it was like 11:45 at night, and from two sides of our car came two motorbikes. One, and there was a truck in front of us. One motorbike passed the truck and kept going, and this other motorbike just went and crashed dead center into the truck, and the guy lost his life on the spot. It was Eid, the first night of Eid in India, so he had been drinking. He was intoxicated to the point where he couldn't make out that that was a truck in front of him, because he was so attached to the idea of drinking and enjoying his senses. Lost his spot on that. And my uncle's a doctor. I asked him, "Do you think he survived?" He's like, "No, he lost his spine collapsed into pieces on that impact." So because of his stupid idea of holding on to that enjoyment at nighttime from just drinking, he lost his life. So in the same way, Ravan also lost his life because he was so attached to having something that was not his. If he had understood that Sita was not his property, money that is not mine, I shouldn't run after it. A woman that is not mine, I should not chase her. But he couldn't understand it, and he lost everything: his life, his kingdom, his wife. He didn't lose his wife, but he lost his life, and he lost his wife and his brother, everything. His children were orphans. It was a disaster. And then eventually, this is towards the last towards the last part of Ramayana, and when this is when like Ram's two sons are. Uh, it's in my bag. It's a blue bag on the floor. So when Ram's sons, Kush and Love, are describing the Ramayana, they're hearing the Ramayana and they're reciting the Ramayana again. They're feeling happiness. They're feeling so happy from hearing their father's glory that they develop that love for Ram. In the same way, when we hear about someone important, like when we hear about a celebrity, like some good that they've done, maybe they've opened a hospital or they've opened a new charity or a school, we feel some sort of happiness because we look up to them, and when we see them do good, we become happy. In the same way, with when it comes to God, when it comes to bhakti, the more we hear, in the beginning I said hearing is very important. The more we hear about God or that divine power or that supreme, the more we develop an attachment, because that's how hearing works. The more you hear, the more you get attached to something. The same way in our day-to-day lives, when we listen to some kind of music like rap or hip hop, the more we listen to it, the more we get involved in that genre. Like, and the less we listen to it, the more further we get from that genre. I remember the last genre that I was experimenting was with country, and the more I listened to country music, I know it's very random. The more I was listening to country music, I liked it, but then all of a sudden I just stopped listening one day because I found something higher. And when I found that something higher, that lower country music, I just stopped listening to it. And then this mantra came into my life. So and this mantra can be sung in any tune that you can think of, any melody. So that's the power of this mantra that we chanted before the class. So like this, if we just hear, then we can develop more and more love towards God and his teachings. And then righteousness is another thing that we can learn from Vibhishan, Ravan's brother. Now before Ram killed Ravan, Vibhishan tried to convince Ravan many times, numerous times, in many different ways, that stop now before it's too late. You can still save your life if you just want to apologize to Ram, give back Sita, and everything will be back to normal. Ravan declined to listen to Vibhishan. Vibhishan decided, I'm not going to waste my time on this moron anymore. I'm going to go and join forces with Ram because I don't see any point in this. I don't want to be part of this downfall. I care about my family. I care about what's right. So I'm going to follow Ram. And he went and told Ram's entourage that I want to speak to Ram. I want to become part of this team. And everyone was like, wow, no, come on, you're joking. You're on the enemy side. How could you all of a sudden want to be part of our team? He must be lying. So they were all hesitant. But Hanuman, because he's a very intelligent monkey, he went, he took Vibhishan and took him to Ram and told Ram, look, Vibhishan wants to talk to you. Um, he wants to join forces with you. What should we do? And Ram said, what do you think? He asked everyone, what do you think? All the monkey warriors were like, no, we should kill him right now. It's just pointless. Then um, one of the chief monkey warriors was like, I don't think he should be considered. He should be just killed. And then Ram asked Hanuman, what do you think? Hanuman said, I've studied the movements and the facial expressions of Vibhishan for many days now because I was touring Lanka and I was seeing him mapping everything. And Vibhishan is a very honest person. He has no ill intentions. Whatever he says is what he thinks, and he's very true to himself. I think we should give him a chance. And because of Vibhishan's righteousness, Ram simply accepted him. He said, no problem. Because you've come to me and want to be part of my team, I accept you. So because of his righteousness, Vibhishan saved his own life and he was able to continue the legacy of Ravana's family lineage, so to say. And he took shelter of Ram and Ram protected him. And one more thing we can learn is that from Vibhishan is that he he told Ravan so many times not to do it, not to do this. Ravan didn't listen. But when he counseled Ram, Ram listened to every single advice that Vibhishan gave him. So even though someone's at an elevated position, doesn't mean that they can just dismiss their the lower people, whatever you want to call them. Rather, someone who's truly elevated or truly superior, a true leader, he takes everyone's words, everyone's concerns, everyone's thoughts into consideration and takes their point of view and really tries to understand, okay, this person is trying to help me, I should listen to them. So Ram did that. And this is why he was successful in capturing, killing Ravan and bringing back Sita back to him. And then we can see that the grace of a saint overcomes the demons within. Now, before Ram, way back in his childhood when he was in his school days, some saintly person had given him a bow and an arrow. And this bow was a divine bow This bow could not be broken under any condition. So this bow is what Ram used to kill Ravan. So because of the mercy and the grace of that saint, years and years ago, Ram was able to kill Ravan through that bow. Now, Ram could have used any other bow, but because he knew that this bow carried the mercy and the grace of a saintly person, it can surely be used to kill a demon. And that's exactly what this bow helped Ram do, kill Ravan. And one last thing, Ravan had 10 heads. So each of the 10 heads represented one of the like lust, anger, greed, envy, so on and so forth. So each of these things were killed simply by one arrow that shot from the bow of Ram that pierced Ravan's heart, because it carried the potency and the spiritual blessings of his of this saintly person that Ram had met years ago. So finally, at the end, when Ram returns back to Ayodhya, his kingdom, everyone welcomes him with a lamp. All the citizens, they lined up. They kind of created like a, when a plane lands, the lights on the runway, they light up to guide the plane into proper landing. In the same way, all the Ayodhya residents, they lit up lamps all across the main road, and they were holding a lamp. And this holding of the lamp and lighting of all of Ayodhya, it represents us welcoming Ram, the supreme happiness, into our hearts. And this lamp also represents bhakti. So when we our devotion, when we let the Lord or the Supreme, the Divine, whatever you want to call it, whatever your version of Supreme God is, when you let that come to your heart, to bhakti or to devotion, that's when you find true like knowledge or illumination or happiness or whatever you want to call it, that bliss. And when that bliss is in your heart, when you finally have that in your heart, only then can you develop the true compassion for all the living beings around you, whether it be human beings, cats, dogs, animals, like cows. Only then can we stop unnecessary killing of animals across the world. Because yesterday at a discourse, I heard that there are 92 billion animals are killed on a daily basis, and about 400,000 people are killed every year in homicides. So all of this can be stopped if we just let the Supreme come to us, reside in our own hearts, if we just accept Him with devotion. And devotion comes in many forms. There is no one way of devotion. It's up to an individual how they want to do it. But here in our bhakti tradition, the easiest way is to chant the mantra that we have on the wall up there, which we chanted before. So let's take this opportunity to chant some more of that mantra. We have Tulsi over here, Tulsi Prabhu, who's going to lead us on an ecstatic little journey on how to welcome God Supreme into our hearts. And that's how we'll be able to celebrate today's festival, which is called Ram Navami. Because Ram appeared on the ninth day of the moon. You know how the moon goes through different phases. It's a crescent, then it's a full, yada yada yada. So he was born after the full moon. 9 days after that, he was born during the daytime, and that's ninth day in Sanskrit is called Navami. So we're celebrating appearance of Ram in our heart, and it's called Ram Navami. So thank you all for listening very much. Are there any questions? Yes.
What is welcoming the lamb?
The lamp represents bhakti, like our devotion towards, like our service attitude, like we want to help others, we want to serve others. That service attitude is what attracts the Supreme. Only with that lamp of devotion can you attract the Supreme. With your knowledge, with your beauty, with your material skills, with your education, you cannot attract God, because He knows everything. He has all those skills. He doesn't need it from you. But what He doesn't have is your love for Him. So when you love Him, when you can accept Him, then He'll come to you. He's there, but He's waiting for you to love Him and do something for Him. And when you do that something for Him, then He's ready. He's readily available. Any other questions?
Before you said about a demon, was it the vulture one? Got the name, but and it was serving Ram. So demons, as in other pastimes too, they sometimes serve
Yeah.
the Lord, even though
Yeah.
they're demons.
it doesn't always depend on the externals. It also depends. It actually all depends on the internal, like what your consciousness is. Sometimes we see evil people. All of a sudden, we see them doing good. So it's not necessarily that all evil people are bad and all good people are good. Good can be bad and bad can be good. So we shouldn't, like that famous saying, we shouldn't judge a book by its cover. It's all about the internals. So same with the vulture, although he was a carnivorous, whatever you want to call it, animal, he still was a servant of God. And God doesn't see difference between bodies. Last question.
You have a copy of them?
Yeah. Of what, the PowerPoint?
Yeah, all the 1 to 23 you just mentioned.
25. Of the points, you mean? Yeah. On the PowerPoint? I can give it to you. We'll talk after class.